Hello everybody, and a very warm welcome today from Polestar to our web event. My name is Paul Gardner and I'm the Commercial Director for Polestar, and I'll be running through some housekeeping items with you before we start. For those of you who are baking today, please make sure that you've got your ovens turned on and your ingredients are ready and at hand. And your oven needs to be at 175 degrees Celsius. Our first presentation is from Julian Smith, Polestar's Managing Director and Owner. Julian will tell you a little about what we do and talk about our perspective, role and real life experiences in the industrial IoT world. Then we'll hear from our guest speaker, Ian Poulet, who is a Siemens Industrial Business Manager working with partners like Polestar and delivering many IoT solutions to customers around the world. And after Ian's presentation, we'll hand over to our very own Louise Sturman to take those of you baking today through what we do. And once the cookies are in the oven, we will answer your questions and have that broader discussion we mentioned earlier. And once the Q&A is complete, we will talk to you a little about the competition and the thanks offering that we're going to give you today for attending the event. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Julian to start the presentations for the day.
Fantastic. Thanks, Paul, once again. Hi, I'm Julian, and thank you for joining us today. In this presentation, I'd like to talk about some of the challenges we've had to overcome when integrating IT, OT, and industrial control environments. And I'm not just talking about the technical challenges, but also the people and processes required to implement organisational strategy. I use the examples of an OT policy that we worked closely on together with Siemens and a global manufacturing customer. Most of you will probably know that there aren't many example policies kicking around on the internet, so we had to start from scratch and make our own. It was a journey where some of the answers to the challenges were blindingly obvious and some were not so. Many of the problems that made the creation of an OT policy difficult shared the same root cause, and we began to see similar challenges in most of the businesses we work with. A lot of folks are clearly in the same boat. I'll finish off by talking about some of the opportunities that COVID-19 is providing with the acceleration and adoption of IoT technology and cloud, and that can assist with the standardization of factories and the deployment of services across multiple countries. A brief introduction to Polestar, our background and who we work with for those of you who don't know us yet. We've been in business over 20 years, and in that time I've worked on both sides of the OT-IT divide, happily working with enterprise IT as well as production engineering. Our core focus is professional and managed services for clients looking to digitize existing production facilities or to build new ones, and we do this globally. As an industrial network integrator, we work across the supply chain with machine builders and OEMs such as Siemens and Fanuc. We've also worked for a long time with IT vendors such as Siemens, Cisco and Microsoft. And we also work in partnership with specialist OT companies like Dispel and Nozomi on industrial cybersecurity projects. In the industrial data space, manufacturing is seeing the biggest increase in demand for new technology. It's also the biggest challenge for us to manage in many ways, as the number of assets in a single factory can range from hundreds to thousands, co-located in a very small geographic area. The challenge for our customers is how to realise the benefits of new technology across operations, innovations, and end customer experience. New OT software and services present an adoption challenge for businesses with a huge range of competing technologies. For example, some of these will promise to deliver X-ray visibility across your production systems. But even if you might know where to start implementing them, it's not always going to be a smooth journey to get to where you might want to end up. And most manufacturers realise they need to compete with the likes of Amazon, who are moving through the supply chain from logistics into manufacturing themselves. End customers are growing more sophisticated in their buying habits and have higher expectations from the products they consume. Manufacturers need to step up to the challenge and build upon the competencies in industrial digital technologies, and investing in factory upgrades or building new factories is not a decision ever taken lightly, as there will be years before that return on investment is realised. But those that don't do this now will get left behind. Our approach is that you should always remember the needs of the business first and foremost. And secondly, cybersecurity is a process and not a product, and it should be baked in from the ground upwards. Policies are excellent ways to begin that process and provide a cookie-cutter approach to implementation at scale. So how to start? From the technology perspective, there are many levels of maturity on the way to connected factories, smart factories or Industry 4.0, and these terms mean different things to different people, but essentially it's digital transformation for manufacturing companies, or more precisely, industrial IoT, digital twins, cyber physical systems. And companies can take advantage of all three, but you need to implement them successfully in the order shown 1 to 5. So you can realise the fully automated future. Many companies have been dipping their toes in the water with proof of concepts for data analytics, and it's not easy to introduce control systems later on in the process. So you need to think of Industry 4.0 almost as if it's a closed loop. And we break these stages down into 5 steps for successful adoption. Basic computerisation, connectivity and environmental. Secure integration of OT and IT layers and all departments. Engineering, production, manufacturing, IT, security. Connected machines, maybe with additional sensors for visibility, leading to a digital module of the factory to show what's happening at any given time. And that allows for the upkeep of the digital twin model at all times. Gathering the right data transparently and in quantities sufficient for meaningful analysis, which is the primary requirement for predictive maintenance. And finally, smart simulation of different future scenarios and identification of the most likely ones, allowing for accurate decision making and implementation of appropriate and timely measures. Eventually, this will be without human assistance in order to get the best results in the shortest possible time through tools like AI. From the people and process perspective, the Independent Made Smarter review in 2017, off the back of the UK government's industrial strategy paper, summarised what the major issues are for a lot of manufacturers, and we see these issues not only on the factory floor but through the entire business, including the boardroom. And the primary key challenges identified were leadership and governance, who, what, where and why. OT is not the sole responsibility of CISOs, CTOs, CPOs, production directors, it's all of them. Upskilling, new skills need to be learnt by existing teams and staff need to be retrained. However, on the plus side, training makes the systems easier to use and understand while reducing complexity or perception of complexity. And adoption, lack of the right standards and too many superfluous standards across the business units creates paralysis and prevents the adoption of industrial digital technologies. And the great thing about standards, there are so many to choose from. One of the biggest barriers to adoption that we hear is in talking with customers is concerns over cybersecurity through frameworks like IEC 62443 and NIST directive now go a long way to providing some help and guidance. And I'll come back to this later as it's really important to get this bit right. There are 2 ways we have seen companies converging their IT and production IT into OT. Firstly, IT undertakes the management of the factory floor and upskills itself in order to provide the critical industrial services that are required for production. This is perhaps more appropriate in high-value manufacturing environments where there is possibly a lot of IT infrastructure in place already. More commonly, and perhaps more successfully, we see organisations build virtual teams with folks from the automation and IT sides of the business agreeing ownership and responsibility of shared OT assets. We see this as a logical way to build convergence in the vast majority of businesses. For any type of business going on this journey, it's critical that you begin with the end in mind and ensure that consensus across all the stakeholders is in place, e.g. automation, IT and security. Everyone should be pivoting towards the same objective. It needs buy-in at all levels. Secondly, it doesn't work for single factories. Creating an OT systems policy with reference designs across a whole group of companies requires a wide range of inputs, especially when standards, such as electrical standards, change internationally. For us, working with Siemens and our customer, the end goal was to get to the following outcomes. Design, plan and implement a secure, highly available OT network in order to reduce downtime and increase operational efficiency, which were the core requirements. Define and then apply the logical ownership of the various layers of the OT networks and systems by planning and appointing responsible owners where there are currently gaps or duplication of roles. allowing automation and other teams to focus on the core business. And this will help link the company strategy and objectives to production practice, e.g. standardising change processes and forms to be used for the rollout of new services and applications. Producing guidelines and recommendations for global network design, and a standardised catalogue of hardware and software vendors and services and products for production facilities across multiple sites and countries. Defining the key service delivery and service levels required for plant operation, e.g. maintenance and support, change management, internal and external. Providing greater visibility of the production system and events, which will assist with integration projects on brownfield sites and inform future policy for new greenfield sites. And finally, spend less time firefighting. Some of the sections that we produced were physical infrastructures, logical network topologies, implementation guidelines, in-life maintenance and support, and also a specific section on control systems where we go into detail with PLC software development, safety controls, alarms, and even using the SIMATIC control security tool. So what did we find, and does this policy come first or last? Well, when we presented the policy back to the engineering and IT teams, one memorable comment from an engineering manager was, "This is brilliant and it's just what we've been looking for. We just have 3 problems stopping us adopting this. We don't have the leadership, the budgets, or the resources." And this sounds familiar. Clearly, the leadership is most important as it will enable solutions to the other 2. An interesting observation was, although companies wanted to digitally transform themselves, they didn't know how to implement their strategy, or more concisely, they didn't have the right roles and the right people. CXOs who are engineers and who understand information technology are very thin on the ground, and most organisations have directors of production engineering and chief information officers. There's a knowledge gap between the 2 that needs to be filled by someone else who can lead on the digital transformation piece with confidence. As we all know, a common problem is that IT departments don't have the time, resources or knowledge to protect production systems. They focus on collaboration, Office 365, cloud-first projects for corporate applications, as well as cybersecurity in the enterprise. And this all contributes to the problem for IT teams who need to stay current and up to date. On the engineering side, the automation teams are more concerned with keeping the lights on in an increasingly complex infrastructure with fewer staff and the need to ensure a sufficient number of spares are available. So when you're building your OT policy, being aware of and taking practical steps to solve the challenges of leadership, upskilling and adoption before you start will, in the words of Borat, make great success. So with leadership, unless the business has a very clear operational technology strategy and it has been clearly communicated to all the stakeholders, then implementing digital transformation projects may not be successful, or at best it will be done in such a piecemeal fashion that it will not meet the business needs going forwards. So effective leadership will bring together and work with the key departments, automation, OT, IT and security, including directors, managers, engineers, operators, in other words, across the business to deliver the strategic intent. With upskilling, digitalisation does not occur without collaboration. As partners, there is only so much we can do externally because digitalisation is a process and not a product as well. Automation and IT departments need to work together and staff need to be trained on each other's systems in order to make operational technology work. So to kickstart this process, set up virtual teams consisting of departmental stakeholders and talk to peers in other companies or industries you deal with who have already been there and done it. And internally, host sessions to learn lessons and share knowledge across the different business units by seconding staff between IT and automation departments, for example. And finally, with adoption, produce a report such as loss prevention reports that include cybersecurity recommendations, help you design new systems, new processes and new procedures to fit new budget requirements. And remember, get senior management to sign off the budget or to sign off the risk. And finally, business need is driving faster adoption of cloud technologies, giving automation and OT the promise of being able to get on with what they do best and make stuff. Cloud also provides the opportunity to bring IT, OT and automation teams together in a neutral space, and perhaps cloud platform security could be said to be more secure than any number of on-premise perimeter and access firewalls if implemented correctly. We're also seeing, particularly with the COVID-19 situation, a lot of customers running 24/7 production schedules with the emphasis firmly on keeping the lights on. So what can be done to minimise risk without having to rebuild a production network from scratch? Perhaps there's a different way of looking at and dealing with the problem and solving it through convergence and logical rather than physical segregation. Transitioning to a hybrid cloud environment can provide transparency and therefore security by design. Moreover, you only need to build it once. And by routing industrial data through more securely controlled cloud systems, you're reducing the attack surface and the number of data points that can be exposed across the entire enterprise. So using a simple application requirement used by IT and OT as an example, secure remote access. Secure remote access to production systems can be used for support, preemptive maintenance, and also commissioning. And our approach is to move the remote access risk to the cloud as well, centralizing it where it can be carefully managed, and at the factory itself, build new converged, robust and resilient OT networks. And once secure remote access from the cloud is in place, you can then start to deliver more inbound applications in the future. Thank you very much. And I'd like to hand over to Paul, I think.
Great, I can put that on screen. And we will obviously go through the baking part of the process and all the mixing very shortly. I would now like to hand you over to Ian Pollitt from Siemens. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. So my name's Ian Pollitt. I head up the business unit within Siemens for the UK and Ireland for the industrial communication, identification and locating business. So my short presentation today is just going to touch on some of the challenges we're finding out there, what those challenges mean, how we need solution partners, and some newer technology where we certainly need to engage with solution partners to help deliver those into customers. And Polestar is one of our first official solution partners we brought on probably around about sort of 3 years ago. And as Julia mentioned, we've had some great success stories. So hopefully this will give you an insight of what we're trying to do, where we're trying to go, and why we need some solution partners. So within Siemens, we're certainly seeing this significant change, a fast change in digitalization, where whatever the vertical is, like manufacturing, power, utility, water, wastewater, any sort of vertical market that we're in is trying to become smarter, faster, and become digitalized. And what Siemens has been saying all along is that you get your communications right, and the communication is the foundation for digitalization. And getting that communication right is absolutely key if you want to drive your business and become smarter and more efficient. And this is what we're seeing in manufacturing. So even though this is a manufacturing sort of focus, we're seeing this across the board, as I touched on earlier. So for example, we used to see some like legacy systems, and we still do see a vast amounts of legacy systems, legacy protocols, good old protocols like Modbus and Profibus out there that need to be upgraded, or you need to pass those legacy protocols over new networks. Lots of manual processes and lots of individualizing of automation. But we're certainly seeing, we're seeing it now, this change on the right-hand side, as Julia mentioned, on machine learning, this full automation, predictive maintenance. So on the networking side, for example, we are trying to say to customers, rather than deciding that you need to investigate or triage your network when a fault occurs, why don't you start looking at your network predictively and start looking at trends to see if there's an issue in certain areas caused by not enough bandwidth, or actually some of that noise is being generated from a third-party device, or it might be actually you're subject to some sort of external or internal attack. So we're seeing these subtle changes in manufacturing in all verticals. The second area we're seeing is something called IoT and IT convergence. So typically the IT people, the people who lived in carpet land, used to spend their time focusing on the printers, the laptops, their machines in the nice, warm, cozy environment of their office. And slowly we're seeing them have an interest in OT, operational telecom, operational technology on the factory floor, that used to be always typically looked after by the maintenance or the engineering team. And we're seeing convergence or discussions going on between the IT departments and the maintenance or the OT people about where the demarcation is, who owns which bits of the network, who's going to be responsible, and what happens when a critical bit of network falls over. And a classic issue that we're seeing is time to implement a fix or time to come to site. So in the IT world, if your printer fails, and maybe 4 hours is okay for someone to come along and fix your printer, but certainly 4 hours is way too long if you're running a bottling line or you're running a car line, where a minute of downtime can cost you 30, 40, 50,000 pounds. So we're seeing these areas, and we're certainly having to help and educate people on the IT side of what industrial networks really mean. What are the key aspects or key requirements of these networks? So for example, high availability. We often have to help engage with customers explaining what real high availability means. What do they want from their network? How available do they want it to be? How robust does it have to be? So that's robustness against electrical noise, wide ranging temperatures, humidity, anything around the robustness of the network. How flexible does it need to be? What's their future proofing? How are they trying to think about the future? What do they want the network to do? And we're certainly seeing the flexibility often means they want to get more and more data from their line, or whatever their process is, and do something with their data. And certainly, as we're in the world of automation, we want to see deterministic networks. What does network determinism mean? Now, if we're using deterministic networks, we have to use that, for example, like safety systems. So deterministic network will drive a safety system, that type of thing. And then on functional safety and mobile applications. So mobile applications could be where the customer has some mobile assembly systems, and rather than using fixed line or fixed infrastructure like copper and fiber, is wireless suitable? And if wireless is suitable, what interference might they have from external sources or from internal sources, i.e. their existing IT wireless infrastructure? So we're seeing these key requirements being examined, and we're having to help customers understand what it truly means when they're trying to drive their new network requirements. And also, as you can see on the left-hand side, what is the link going to be between the enterprise network and the industrial, the OT network? So one of the challenges that Siemens have is, I guess, a positive thing is that we have, well over 3,500 individual products, which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's the largest range of industrial communication portfolio. We are the leader in the world in relation to selling these solutions. But the challenge is it's so vast and so wide that causes a challenge where what product is suitable for the customer solution and application. And in today's world, customers often say, fantastic product range, but we actually want a solution from you. And because of that, we have to work with partners. And I'll touch on this later, but also in our range, we have optical identification. So these are cameras, for example, that can read 2D and 3D barcodes, RFID for reading information, and now more recently, RTLS, real-time location systems. So our 5 key portfolios where we're looking for either doing things ourselves or with assistance via partners is the wired side, that's copper and fiber, wireless, typical wireless, Wi-Fi systems, security solutions and hardware, remote access, and a wide range of software. And the software covers things like, network management software through track and trace via our RTLS systems. Now, one example of a really complex product is this RuggedCom unit. So this RuggedCom unit here has wireless Wi-Fi technology. It has dual SIM cards. It can talk legacy protocols. It has a wide range of power supplies. It has GPS. It also has an embedded PC inside it that you can run your own application, which is absolutely fantastic. Quite challenging to configure, quite complex in what you can do with it. So quite often we need to work with solution partners who can build a complete turnkey solution using this bit of hardware to meet customers' requirements. And so one example is London Underground use this system to replace industrial in PCs that are running trackside. So the PC, if they're trackside, will draw in a huge amount of brake dust from the fans, and they're replacing these, and that's being done with a system integrator, as a system integrator can build this into a complete turnkey solution for London Underground. So it just gives you an example of some of the complexity we have in the products and why we need solution partners. So together with our solution partners, we have this fantastic leading portfolio. We have a professional services department. So in my small business within Siemens, I have a small team of people that can do designing, commissioning, troubleshooting for customers, a small professional services team that we charge for. but that's only relatively small. We need a wide and a detailed solution partner network locally and also globally to enable us to push that portfolio out to deliver a wide range of solutions to customers. And we're also delivering certified training. So to become a solution partner within Siemens, you have to become certified. So we have a range of courses focusing on OT. You attend the course, there's a proper exam at the end, a multi-choice exam. At the end, you pass that exam, it then helps part of your certification process to become a Siemens solution partner. So we've been doing this for a number of years, and I've touched on Polestar was one of the first because we engaged with them. We saw what they were trying to do. They were trying to get more and more into OT, and we wanted their IT experience. So there's a classic example how we work with Polestar to deliver really, really complex solutions into customers. So what overall can we do together? Well, as I touched on, we can do on-site supports and services. That can be triaging a customer's network through to designing a network, looking at a network, trying to understand what they're trying to do and trying to future-proof it. Migration. We do a lot of work with customers and trying to migrate from an old, maybe a serial-based network wanting to go to an Ethernet network, and it can be very, very complex as they expect over a weekend to move from an old system to a new system. And that requires a huge amount of design and consultancy, understanding what we want to try and do now and going forward into the future, how we're going to deploy that in terms of installing it and commissioning it and handing it over. And then part of that handover process could be training the customer. So how are they going to support it going forward? Which bit of Siemens can help, and certainly which part of a solution partner can help if they want to put a service wrap around that entire solution. Now, just touching on some new technology. So Siemens, I think it was last week or the week before, launched the world's first industrialized 5G router or gateway. And we're seeing a huge amount of noise. I've never seen before so much noise and excitement being generated from 5G. And our first unit has done that top right-hand side. It's a 5G release 15 unit that enables this enhanced mobile broadband, so you can get 250, 350 megabits per second if you're a 5G coverage area. And then going around the clock, eventually it will support release 16, which is this ultra reliability, low latency networks that we need in our world for safety systems and safety protocols and for low latency applications that are the norm in manufacturing. And as we could go further around, on the bottom left, you can see this massive machine type communication. So private networks using private spectrum. We will certainly need solution partners to help us deliver these turnkey 5G solutions for customers. And we have, as I said, a huge amounts of interest in that. We get our first 5G gateway into the UK early next month, and we have a waiting list of people wanting to trial it. And then the Wi-Fi, on the wireless side, we have a huge wireless portfolio. Julian touched on that beforehand. And we're now talking to people about Wi-Fi 6. So Wi-Fi 6 will become a technology that's being designed now. We get our first products again early next year. And we see that Wi-Fi 6, 5G will complement the industrial Ethernet world or the industrial communication world. But we're also saying that you can still use legacy copper, fiber systems. You can still use normal Wi-Fi, because today you can deliver complex system using current technology, but Wi-Fi 6 and 5G will certainly form part of that. And you can see with Wi-Fi 6 some of the funky things with it, this enhanced robustness for short haul and long haul operations, particular spectrum that's suitable. You can go into low power mode. So we certainly see, almost like going back many years between Betamax and VHS, where there's a trade-off between whether you thought Betamax was better or VHS was better. We see there be a similar discussion going on between Wi-Fi 6 and 5G. We want to be part of that, and certainly we need a solution partner to help us. Finally, on RTLS. So around about 2 years ago, Siemens acquired an RTLS company, real-time location systems or real-time location solutions, and we've been fantastically successful here in the UK promoting RTLS out into the market. And we're finding this such wide-ranging applications for, even today, for COVID applications for tracing and locating people, through to typically people wanting to know where their high-value assets are in a dockyard or in a production facility. So on the bottom left, you can see some of the equipment there with RTLS tags that you can read and write to. Our RTLS is based around the Wi-Fi spectrum and bands. Polestar have excellent understanding of that. So as another example why we would work with a solution partner to help deliver these turnkey RTLS solutions. RTLS is a range of products, but it's a range of products that you have to carefully build to build a solution. And some examples of that is, like I said, is very, very precise. We can get down to around about 20 centimeters accuracy. That's fantastic, but it needs a huge amount of configuring and tuning to get that high level of accuracy. But overall, we're finding a huge amount of interest with RTLS. So just to touch on the main bits. So we touched on this fantastic class-leading product portfolio, well over 3,000 devices. We have a small professional services team within Siemens, but without solution partners like Polestar, we can't go any further than that. We need partners to help us build these large complex systems. And to become a solution partner, you need these training schemes which Polestar have been on, and they are suitably accredited and certified. But we're also finding customers need this, which is also a good thing, as it enables us to communicate with them and their IT departments to deliver networks that are suitable. And that really touches on my presentation. I hope that's okay, guys, and I'll hand back to you.
Okay, right. Well, I will now hand you over to Louise, who is going to talk us through our cookie baking recipe for those that you are joining in.
So if you're joining us for the baking part of the session today, some of you have been fortunate enough to receive some of our cookie baking kits so that you can join us. If you want to put your cameras on, feel free. If not, just bake alongside or just take notes and do a bit of baking later. For the first part of the session, to get the mix on the go, you'll need your cookie mix jar that we've provided in the pack. This has got the spices and the plain flour mixed inside it. You'll also need your refrigerated butter and your refrigerated egg. It's important with this recipe to make sure that the butter and the egg were put in the fridge, just so that when the cookies go in the oven, they hold their form and they don't spread. You'll also need your molasses, and you need 105 grams of this weighed out. I've pre-weighed this just to make things quicker. And you'll need your jar of light brown sugar and vanilla essence. Okay. So to start with, you need to take your cookie mix jar. You need to empty the contents into a bowl. If you are going to be using a mixer today, I suggest you put this mix into a glass bowl or a baking bowl first, and then use the mixer for the next part of the recipe. Once you've emptied out your contents into the bowl, it's good to give it a good thorough mix. You can use the Polestar baking spoon that we provided. You need to make sure that the spices are well incorporated into the flour mixture.
I'll just take a quick snapshot of Stuart, see how you're getting on, Stuart. Let's have a look. Well, we've not managed to burn anything yet, so I think that's quite a positive sign.
Hopefully we won't burn these. The next part of the recipe needs you to take your butter, take your sugar, and to put them into the mixer if you're using a mixer. If you're not, just use another bowl. Again, you can use a spoon to do this. It shouldn't be too hard, but it is a bit easier with a mixer.
Just have a quick look at Stuart again, see how you're getting on.
Yeah, so that was 140 grams of butter that you needed, plus the whole contents of the jar of sugar that we provided, if you're joining us with a baking kit today. If you are using mixer, it would be great if you could use this paddle mixing attachment. So this is what you can see quite clearly on Stuart's one or on my camera here. You could also use a thread hook if you needed to as well, but with the balloon whisk, the mix would get caught into all of the threads, so it would make it extremely difficult. We had some comments. What spices are included in the flour, or is it a cookie recipe secret? So if you did receive one of the baking packs, I have actually provided the full recipe on the back as well, just in case you want to make another batch. The ones that I've put in here today are, I believe, ginger, nutmeg, and allspice. And it is important to know that if the spicing isn't right for your taste level, if you try this and you think it's got too much or too little ginger, you can amend the recipe and put in the desired quantity that you want. All right, Stuart, are you ready to move on to mixing?
Yeah, I'll put Stuart, you're now on live as well. We'll see who's got the loudest mixer.
Right. We may need to mute ourselves in a moment because it may be a bit noisy, but if you're using the mixer, do it on a low setting. You want to do it just until the butter and the sugar are incorporated into each other.
So everything okay at the minute, Stuart? You'll have to use hand gestures.
Seems to be. Just got a massive lump now.
Down a couple of times and mix again to get it well incorporated. I just change my camera view. So it could look a bit like this mixture once you've done. You should really get the butter fully incorporated out, so I need to get a few lumps out of this by the looks of it. So we've now mixed down so it's all come together into a bit of a butter sugar paste. I wouldn't advise eating this as it is, just in case, but now we need to add in the large egg, which has been refrigerated, and we also need to add in the vanilla. So the vanilla essence, you need to add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla essence. Again, it's down to taste. If you feel like you want to add more in another batch, then go for it. The main important thing with cookies is just getting the consistency quite right and also not over mixing, which is why we've asked for people to use the lower speed where possible. Okay, if I just switch back to my other camera. So now it goes back into the mixer, and again, just mix it until it is well incorporated into the sugar butter dough.
How's yours going, Stuart? Is it looking like Louise's?
It's looking a lot messier.
Yeah, it is.
Kind of coming together now, hopefully. We'll see in a few minutes.
Right, brilliant.
At this point, it may be looking quite questionable, but this is actually okay. It will look even worse in a second when we add in the molasses, which is just actually black treacle, in other words. So 105 grams, and it needs to just go back into here, and then we take it back to the mixer to get it just incorporated into the dough. Thankfully, I weighed this out before we started this because it is quite sticky.
It does look a bit Marmitey.
Yeah, it does actually quite look kind of Marmitey, Vegemite. Thankfully, it tastes a lot better than Marmite, in my opinion.
I'm not sure anything could taste better than Marmite. Trigger some real debates here, couldn't we?
Okay, back to the mix now. I'll just wait.
How's yours going, Stuart? You managed to get it out of the bowl?
No, there's more in the bowl, in this little bowl, than there is in the actual mixing bowl. So maybe not enough treacle for me, but I'll carry on.
I dread to think how many pots there are going to be washed after this. Hopefully a lot of it can go in the dishwasher.
Yeah, thankfully,
Yeah,
everything that I'm using can go in the dishwasher. But yeah, this pot's going to need soaking. Right. So it just needs to go in one more time on a low setting to get the wet ingredients incorporated. So just low setting.
You know, for some of the reason, Louise, I was thinking this would all kind of come pretty much pre-mixed and you just rolled out some flour, but there's actually still quite a bit to it, isn't there?
Yeah, there's quite a bit to do in cookie making, but thankfully you don't have to do all the prep work and weighing as much out when you've got a mixed jar. These things kind of make quite good Christmas presents for people as well. I know a lot of people kind of just wrap them up nicely in a jar and give them to friends to bake with their families.
Yeah, it's a nice touch when they're homemade.
Yes, yeah, it's something fun to do. Just going along baking or go bake later, you will notice that it does look quite messy and a bit bitty at the moment, but this should kind of come together more once we add the flour and the ginger and spice mix. Right, so then just goes back onto, and then we just need to slowly add in flour and ginger mixture a bit at a time. So I suggest maybe putting 1 or 2 big kind of heaped baking spoonfuls in at a time. And like I said earlier, try not to over mix it if possible. Secret to cookie mixes is not to overwork the dough.
So is yours going to plan now, Stuart? Happy with that? It's all coming out of the bowl?
Yeah, it's looking all right now, actually. Not as bad as it did a minute ago.
So have you got anybody lined up for doing some tasting as well?
Yes, my daughter's going to be doing the tasting for me and the decorating as well.
Very good. Well, that's definitely looking a lot more like cookie dough that I'm used to seeing.
Yes, yeah. It's quite thickened now. I'll just go and switch back to my other camera. So this is what the dough kind of comes together to look like. It should be quite malleable, but still quite a bit wet as well. It's hard to explain the texture, but you should be able to leave an impression in the dough. You should be able to mold it a bit. If it is feeling a bit too wet to roll, then you can always add a bit of flour to kind of make it a bit firmer. If it's looking a bit too dry, just add a tablespoon of milk at a time just to loosen it up a bit. Now this recipe does quite a lot of dough, so at this point I would probably split it in half and put some of it in the fridge for later if you wanted to, or you can try and cut them all out now, but I think we'll be stood here for quite a long time if you did. So we've provided you with some baking sheets as part of your kit, but if you just lay out some baking sheet onto a worktop, or if you want to use a chopping board or just flour the surface, if you have some extra flour, it would be plain flour would be best. You just sprinkle it over surface and then just take the amount of dough that you want to do. I would suggest doing a little bit at a time and rolling at about half a centimetre, but it depends. If you like thick cookies, you can roll them out a bit thicker. If you like thin, crispy ginger cookies, you can go thinner. They should expand a little bit in the oven though, just so you're aware. Yeah. So.
Is that cheating using a bit of greaseproof paper? Okay.
It might be seen to be cheating, but it will really help you to keep your surfaces clean.
Right.
You just take the rolling pin. We've provided one as part of the kit for those of you that received it. If not, any rolling pin will do. Roll it till it's about ½ centimetre thick, or however thick you would like to have your cookies.
We're just watching Stuart at the minute as well, seeing how he's getting on. Are you going to do some ultra deep cookies there, Stuart, or are you going to take Louise's advice?
I'll tell you when it's done, what I'm going to do.
Ah.
I'm struggling with the greaseproof paper and it rolling around for me at the moment.
Right.
Mine's slightly tucked under a bowl, so, and I'm holding it down on one side.
Obviously done this before.
Not as many times as you would think. So we provided some star cookie cutters as part of our packs for people, but you can use any shapes you like to make your cookies. But you know, we are doing a competition later on where those who've done their best star cookies and put them on a tree, for example, or just showing them nicely displayed, you could be in for a chance to win some prizes, which Paul will talk about later. So I've picked my largest star cookie cutter to begin with. Just go quite close to the edge so you can get as many star prints out as possible. And then now is the hard part, because when I've done these in test, they're quite difficult to keep the shape nicely when you move them across. So I think I might try and find a then you just transfer it to your baking sheet. You might need to straighten it out a little bit at this point. You can use whichever of the other ones that we provided as well. You can mix it up a bit as well. We provided a range of cookies. So this one will create a little window in the cookie by cutting out the centre. Those of you who received the kit, you also got some kind of candy canes with your kit as well. If you wanted to, and you've made a little window in the cookie like I've done, you can fill that window with broken candy canes, and it will make a kind of stained glass effect. If you want. Cookies. How's your rolling and cutting going, Stu?
It's going all right. I managed to do one large one and 3 little ones, so I'm going to roll some more out and do another couple of big ones, I think.
Yeah. I'll do a few more and just get this set in the oven. But I think in my original test batch, this recipe did something along the lines of 20 cookies, depending on size. So it's quite a lot of dough. I suggest that people, if you're doing baking alongside this at the moment, that you reserve some of it back, and then maybe you can do some with your families later.
That's great. And for those, yeah, who've got maybe the kids at school or at university, they'll be they're coming back to a nice surprise, hopefully, or even help make the rest of the batches up.
Yes.
We couldn't find a way of making the cookie dough Polestar blue then. It could have been quite an interesting one.
You could try. I'm not sure how well it would work. If you are going to add food colouring to anything, just be careful because food colouring is quite wet. A lot of people use food colouring gels. It's a bit of a thicker consistency and it doesn't kind of split through the dough as easily if you're going to colour it. Again, with the icing recipe that I provided on the back if you want to make your own icing so that you can colour it. Again, gels work best, but you can use food colouring. Just be a bit careful with how much you put in.
Great.
If it is making rice too wet, just add a bit more sugar to it, or a bit more golden syrup.
Just take a look at how you're getting on now, Stuart, as well. That's pretty impressive. Looks like there's plenty of flour around there.
There is now. I just realised between rolling, I didn't put any more flour on, so they're all sticking to the surface. But I think I'm good now.
Yes. I might just do 1, 2 more, and then we can get these in the oven, and we can start doing some questions and answers.
Great stuff. And how long will these need in the oven, Louise?
Generally, it takes about 10 minutes, but if you like a crunchier biscuit, then go for more. It will still feel soft when they first come out of the oven, though, so don't feel that it might need extra time because if it's not set. It will set better as it dries or as it cools down.
Right. So is it one of those things you can do a little bit by eye as well if they?
Yes, so they should puff up ever so slightly. They should, because we put the butter and the egg in the fridge, they shouldn't warp or split. And then, yeah, 10 minutes, and it should be kind of slightly spongy. Maybe you should be able to press it and it feel a bit soft, but be more solid than this wet mix. And it should have increased maybe by half.
Okay, well that's not too long to wait, and hopefully everyone's ovens will be at temperature by now, so people haven't got too long to get to the tasting session.
If you do like a crunchier bake, just put it in for a bit longer or afterwards, and you should be fine, as long as they don't burn. Right. So I have a nice tray of cookies, so I'm going to just put those in the oven now. So I preheated to 175 degrees. Just put in the middle of the oven if you've got only one tray. If you've got several, just spread them out nicely and wait 10 minutes.
That's great. Thanks, Louise. What I'll do now is while those are cooking, I will go through our Q&A questions that have been raised, and while we're doing that, I'll conveniently leave the competition details. But one of the questions we had is, why do companies need to even create a combined IT/OT policy?
I think a lot of the time, a lot of the companies that we work with, they tend to have an IT policy. They tend to have a security or information security policy. They may have automation and control policies, and a whole raft of other policies. But if they're lucky, actually, to be fair, but a lot of the time, in terms of joining those dots together, there isn't something that will basically help folks understand how to bridge the that gap now between what is often a very intelligent piece of automation and control equipment with newer PLCs. It's almost a computer in its own right, really, and potentially some of the things that you might find that are a lot more analog, and some of the the protocols that Ian was talking about in his presentation as well. So you need to have something that can help explain in a meaningful way what the approach needs to be taken in order of connecting all these things together, managing them, making sure they're secure, and making sure that they continue to work, and that the folks that have oversight of them are in a position to be able to make sure that they are doing their jobs correctly. And that's the thing that we do seem to find is missing with a lot of organisations we're speaking to.
And then the next question we've got, maybe a good one for Ian. In your experiences, who should be driving the upgrades and adoption of the IoT initiatives and things like the IT/OT policy?
That's a good question. Difficult to answer. I was just listening to Julian's comments, and if I could touch on that one first.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the things that when we go into customers and they want to upgrade, we often ask, do they have a policy, either any policy in place for on the IT side and for the OT side? And it'd be very, very unusual if they do have one, because they don't normally have anything at all. I think in our experience, the IT departments don't have true policies. It's often in someone's head, which makes life quite difficult. But we're certainly, once they have a policy in place, it does help everybody. In the second one, I guess it's a mixture really. So typically, the IT departments are very good at documenting, writing policies and procedures for good, safe practice and mechanisms for gaining, let's say, remote access to networks and how to configure it to make sure it's secure. So they're very good at documenting and policy enforcement and policy writing, but typically they don't understand the operational world at all in terms of the processes, the needs and requirements. So you have to engage with the sort of manufacturing floor, so they can explain to you what they're trying to do and how and what they want from that in terms of like a reliability, resilience, redundancy, that type of thing.
Right, so there's probably no one answer depending on the organisation.
No, I think you have to engage with both parties, otherwise you'll just create too many arguments because neither will understand each other's worlds.
Okay. And I think if I could add to that as well, because that reminded me of something, Ian, actually as well. One of the activities that we undertook while implementing and creating the policy we used in the presentation today was actually talking to people throughout the business, whether it was the director of networking in the IT side, or whether it was somebody on the ground in the factory, perhaps an operator, and getting that perspective in terms of understanding, you know, it seems a very daft question to say, but asking them, you know, do you understand what the impact of what you're doing here is having on the rest of the, you know, of the technology and the processes and the things involved? And could you take what you do here in this particular factory and go to another factory in the group and do exactly the same thing? You know, what kind of standards are in place between the two that make it easy to pick things up and take them somewhere else and you know, do those processes and procedures? And I think that's another reason why it does change on a case by case basis, depending on what the level of maturity is within the factory or the business itself, you know, in terms of some of that adoption, and whether those policies and procedures on the IT side and how good that level of documentation is. Because in theory, you should be able to take that documentation from one place and do exactly the same thing in another. And that's what, you know, that's where we were trying to get to, I think, with the case study that we've been talking about, Paul. If you can do that and bring those folks along with you, then, you know, you're in a really, really good place to have the, you know, to understand that you have the right people who know what they want to do and achieve in tow, and leading that hearts and minds type approach.
Another one we've got, which is quite good as well, is, are people really spending money on IoT initiatives with COVID-19?
Well, Ian, you might be in a good place to answer that one.
Yeah, I would say, so for this year, April wasn't great, but then from then it's been unbelievable. Probably one of our best years. It's I don't think we've ever been as busy as we are at the moment. and that is so wide-ranging, from, let's say, food and bev organisations having to spend money because they've got to upgrade, because they haven't invested in their operational networks for many years, through to automotive and other applications where they have to upgrade lines because the equipment that they're currently using is end of life, and they have to upgrade because the networks aren't suitable because they have to get more data from their systems and subsystems, either through legislation or just because they want to improve the workflow. Absolutely, it's phenomenally busy at the moment, and I can only see that increasing, not just in relation to products but security side of things. And not just in manufacturing, across pretty much every single market we deal with is extremely busy at the moment, certainly.
That's interesting. I genuinely wasn't sure what the answer would be, but it does sound like a number of industries we've spoken to where there was a dip and then it just kind of really came back with a bang. So that's
yeah. I think the staggering one that people don't believe is that the number of organisations that run their OT networks by buying spares off eBay. It is unbelievable, the number that do that. It's very strange that we find it strange in the IT world. They'll get a refresh every 3 years, but the OT world, they'll get a refresh when they've finally proven to the point that there are no spares available on eBay, and that's genuinely, that's not an exaggeration.
I know you're talking truth there, Ian, because I've been there as well, with quite a few customers. When the spares start running out on eBay, it's time to actually do something about it, I think, and have the justification to do so. Which is, I think that will change. One of the things that we've seen over the last 6 to 9 months, really, as you say, since April, has been that a lot of customers have been running flat out and haven't been able to implement any changes. Change control has been in effect. So, projects that were due to bring about to implement a new machine or a new drive or a new PLC or whatever have had to be halted. So a lot of that energy has to be been diverted to keeping the lights on and keeping things running. So we do think that off the back of that, folks are going to have to be thinking about ensuring that those lines continue to run going forwards, because they can't carry on as if they're as things have been going over the last 6 to 9 months, Paul. There's really going to need to be some worn out drives, etc., that are going to need to be replaced.
Yeah, I guess there's only so long you can make it last. And I must admit, even from my IT days, I think I was guilty of buying spares on eBay to eke the last bit of life out of things. But it's obviously not a long-term sustainable option, is it? Especially when production starts to increase.
No, and there's other strange things that happen. So, like, we often see that when they want to do a refresh or an upgrade in the OT world, the timescales are very tight. So there's one application we know of where they will have to rip out 50 wireless systems, replace them with a brand new wireless system and all the related automation in 10 days, which is an astronomical piece of work to be done in 10 days. And the timescales and that also is compounded by lack of skills. There's a huge skill shortage in OT, and that drives challenges for everybody.
Very true. Yeah, it's the skills, I think, as I mentioned, is the skills is quite a big problem, becoming a bigger problem now. So I think hopefully we're going to be seeing in time to come. I think the predictions are that they will become less of an issue in the next few years. But certainly at the moment, there's the impact of COVID-19, for example, has meant there are many more people with delayed projects, but the skill shortage in terms of implementing some of the new technology roadmaps made things get delayed, as I was saying. there is a lot more interest in specific applications, track and trace, as Ian was talking about. IoT health applications for obvious reasons, drones, and particularly things like digital twins with scenario planning as well. There are a lot of skill shortages in those areas. So at the end of the day, we are going to be have to be resilient and help our customers be resilient, but these things will need to be replaced at some point.
Okay, well, thanks. I will. I'll just ask one more question that we've had from Mick. Thanks for that, Mick, and then we'll cut over to Louise to see some hot news. So if you've got your cookies in the oven at the minute, you should be checking them because they may be in a slightly darker shade than they should be, depending on what your oven was set to. But yeah, Mick's asked a really good one. Probably will need both of you to answer this one as well. What would you say is the best approach to selling the business case to factory directors who are only really interested in buying new machines to increase production and profit? Corker of a question, I think that one, Mick.
Good question, isn't it?
Good question. Yeah, it's a genuine question that we see. Like they can buy. They got budget to buy a new bottling line or upgrade the network. I think it comes down so that in our world typically things don't happen until something happens. So classic example we're aware of today is a production facility we're working on. Is the network it literally is running. We don't know how it's working. They need it to function. And they're now going to have to make a decision that they're going to have to upgrade that network because they realise now that every day it fails because of poor installation or something. Yet their IT department gets a brand new wireless network. And where does the money come from? The money is generated for that organisation from the production line, and typically that is often a decision. Now that's great. But then also we get the phone call going, right, we made a decision, we want to do X, Y, and Z, and we want it done now. And of course, that can be a massive headache, and hence that's why we need partners, because we can work together with those partners. But yeah, quite often nothing happens until something happens in our world.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, cybersecurity is the classic, isn't it? Cyber incidents. I think going back to Mick's question though, yeah, I mean it's a kind of, is the budget spent on innovation? Is it spent on operations? Is it that classic capex opex? One of the problems we see a lot of the time is that as more and more stuff comes in a service package, traditional capex budgets don't really fit what the needs of the business are for folks in the production side, and that's causing a lot of headaches at the moment because you're talking about something that may be like the life cycle of a machine, maybe 10 years plus or a new line, but when you start looking at what the spend would be on AWS or something like over that 10 years, it starts getting really, really scary in terms of pricing. So there has to be some considered approach to just where the need for the businesses going forwards is, and going back, is there a risk here that needs to be signed off by management, or is there some investment that needs to be done by management instead? And giving them the choice, which is it to be, I think may help with some of driving some of those decisions forwards, I think, Mick. So it'd be interesting to see if you've got any particular issues at the moment with that, but because it is something that we hear a lot of.
No, thanks both. That's much appreciated. Okay, well, I will close the Q&A sessions now, and just before I tell you the details of the competition, I'm just going to let you take a look at the end result of what Louise has been baking, and then we'll flick over to Stuart as well. So, are you happy with those, Louise? You're on mute at the minute.
Yes, so where they've transferred a bit, it's, I think I need to get a bit straighter at some of these, but in terms of the actual bake, they seem to be all right. Once they come out of the oven, just leave them on the tray for a few minutes and then transfer to a rack if you have one. If not, just put them onto another board of some kind. You can see this is what the dough colour was looking like before we put it in the oven, and this is the colour of it now. So it has got a paler shade, and it is quite firm to the touch, but it's still a bit soft in the middle. But that could be the thickness that I've rolled it. They're fairly thick cookies, but that's what my household likes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, and thanks for talking us through it today. It's much appreciated. We'll just have a quick look at Stuart.
To say, though, if you are intending to put them on the Christmas tree as part of the competition, I would put a little small hole into the cookie before you put them in the oven. It's just easier than trying to do it afterwards, otherwise it could break.
Right, great tip. Lovely. Thanks, Louise. That's great, and hopefully we've all learned something. I'm just going to have a quick look at Stuart's results as well. They're looking pretty good, Stuart. Are you pleased with that?
Yes, sorry, I've only done one tray. I got carried away with all the rest of the cookie dough and making little tiny stars. So I'm going to have to put them in after this. But this is my first batch. They've not done too bad by the looks of it. A couple of extra brownie bits at some of the ends because I didn't actually set a timer. I kind of guessed. So they look all right though. The next one I'll put a timer on so it's not as bad. But no, it's all right.
Yeah, that's a really, really good result. Look forward to seeing them being decorated. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. So this is the fun bit. We have got a few prizes on offer. So for the best decorated Christmas cookies competition, we want you all to put your photos of your competition entries onto social media and tag Polestar on #ChristmasCookieChallenge and #PolestarCookies. That's both on LinkedIn and Twitter between now and December the 17th. And then the winners will be announced on December the 18th. There's a few more places you can put on social media as well. You can put the @Polestar Interactive on your LinkedIn posts if you want. The prizes, first place will be a Kindle Fire 10 HD plus a few days consultancy to come along and help you with some of your IoT opportunities or challenges. So hopefully you find that useful. We've got lots of experiences in lots of different areas, so we can be helping you with things that you're trying to develop or things you may be having some problems with. Second prize will be an IoT assessment. So we'll get one of the team to come along who's got plenty of experience and look at how we can help you with some of your IoT challenges, or maybe some of your opportunities to kickstart your Industry 4.0 discussions. And third place would be a light touch review to help see if we can give you a bit of steering and guidance towards where you need to be looking at where you're going for the future, and keep that sort of fairly light for yourselves, and hopefully again gives you a good place to start having some of those discussions with some of the senior members of the team, maybe, or there may be some more specific fixes that you've been looking for some help on, which we can gladly get involved in. So if you can get your decorating done, there's a few good examples there that you can see the team have put together on the slide that's up on the screen at the minute. You can see the kind of thing we're looking for. If it's Polestar colours, fantastic. Those of you who've got the cookie kits will hopefully be able to do some of that, and hopefully again you can have a bit of fun if you don't do that straight away, maybe doing that at the weekend, and well worth getting that Kindle Fire going, so that there's something to have fun with over the Christmas break as well. So I'd just like to say big thank you to all the presenters. It's been really informative. Hopefully you found it very useful and engaging as well as our audience, and we will be presenting some more webinars next year, and in the meantime, I hope you all have a great Christmas and enjoy the time with the family. So thank you very much.